Good evening and welcome to our patient education programme, hosted by Hashir International Specialist Clinics and Research Institute for Misophonia, Tinnitus and Hyperacusis. Hashir International is a multidisciplinary organisation which aims to help you with the assessment and management of your misophonia, tinnitus or hyperacusis. Each month, we will be exploring a different topic within sound sensitivity, aiming to give you a broader knowledge and understanding of these conditions. My name is Joanna Barker, and I am your host for these sessions. I've been an audiologist for the last 12 years, and I'm a specialist in sound sensitivities. Today, we are joined by Frida Kuhn, founder of My Tinnitus Club and Outring Tinnitus, two interconnected platforms designed to create a community aimed at supporting those with tinnitus. Frida has used his own lived experience with tinnitus to create a coaching service based on cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, which aims to help those with tinnitus habituate and improve their quality of life. My Tinnitus Club is an online community for individuals seeking mutual support, shared experiences, and practical advice. This platform provides access to weekly group coaching sessions, comprehensive courses, and a supportive network of people. Frida is sharing with us a talk on living beyond tinnitus, my journey, and how ACT and neuroplasticity can help you achieve habituation. In this talk, he will be discussing his journey with tinnitus, hearing loss, and how this inspired him to found his coaching services, My Tinnitus Club, and the other resources to help those struggling with tinnitus. He'll be sharing with us how acceptance and commitment therapy and neuroplasticity aim to enable relief for those with tinnitus. There will be the opportunity to ask questions after the presentation, so please feel free to post these through the chat function. Thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand over to you.
Thank you, Joanna, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. I'm happy to be able to speak to you guys tonight after the clocks changed. I don't know if the clocks changed for you guys as well yesterday.
Yeah.
We had a clock change, so that Monday is a little bit different for everyone, I think, depending on where you're from. No, thank you. Let me pull up my presentation and let me know whether you can see it, whether this works. Can you see
Yep,
the
that's
presentation?
perfect.
Okay, great. Well, yes, thank you again, Joanna, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. As Joanna mentioned, my name is Frida Kühne. I am from Berlin, Germany. I'm a German, born and raised, but spent a lot of years all around the planet studying and yeah, just getting to know different countries, etc. And today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about not only my personal story with single-sided deafness and a hearing aid and tinnitus in my remaining right ear, but also how I came to found My Tinnitus Club, our online community and coaching program for people with tinnitus, where I've until now worked with 500 plus people and helped them on their path to habituation. And as Joanna already said, I'm super happy to take any questions. So I'm going to give this presentation. It's probably about 15 to 20 minutes long. And then afterwards, if you guys want, you can ask me questions. And I think you can put them in the chat in YouTube easily as well. So first of all, I want to give a very brief introduction of where I'm basically coming from and why I do what I do. Because I frequently say this, I do not have a background in medicine, psychology, or audiology. I have studied politics and law, worked in consulting, and then found that to be not interesting enough for me, so to say. And about 8 years ago, I moved to Berlin. I started working for a company called Mimi Hearing Technologies. They have a smartphone-based hearing test, and that was the first time I started getting into like the hearing space. Had a lot of contact also with the tinnitus clinic here in Regensburg, with the Charité tinnitus program, and over the years I just became so fascinated by it, and I just know how much I suffered when I first got tinnitus when I was 19. And eventually I was like, okay, you know what? Since 2019, then I decided to found my own coaching business, to start working as an online tinnitus coach in one-on-one sessions, and about 3 years ago founded mytinnitus.club, our online community, which I will be talking a little bit about later as well. Also created a podcast. By now we have racked up over 100 episodes listened to by far more than 10,000 people all over the world. So that's something that I'm also quite proud of as an achievement. And these are some of the basics. As I said before, I was personally born deaf in my left ear. So my mom had an infection during pregnancy. And out of that, there was a malfunctioning development of the hearing nerve. That's why I am completely deaf in my left ear. My right ear was more or less always fine. But as many people do in their teenage years, I went a little bit too much clubbing back in the days. And back then, there were no earplugs at the entrance to a club or a bar. So basically, none of my friends or anyone really used hearing protection. So I didn't either. And that was too much for my one remaining ear, so to say. And eventually I started having tinnitus, the usual journey, going to the ENT. ENT says, well, there's not really that much we can do here. And I was like, okay, well, if there's nothing for me required to do, then so be it. A couple of years later, I started wearing my first hearing aid because I realized in university that I had really difficulty with speech understanding, etc. in class, especially for the when the girls were talking in class with the higher pitched voices. That was more difficult for me. And I started wearing a hearing aid. That was not easy for me at the start because I was like, look, you're 21, starting wearing a hearing aid. Now I see it completely different. People who need glasses wear glasses. And for hearing aids, it's the same thing, right? You don't hear well, you need a hearing aid, you wear a hearing aid. But back in the days, it was like quite a little bit of a thing for me to overcome as well, wearing a hearing aid. But I very quickly felt that it would help me so much that it would really outweigh the form factor, so to say, of wearing a hearing aid at that young age. And really from then on, I was protective of my hearing. I didn't really have any cases of hyperacusis. I was, yes, sensitive to louder sounds. Yes, because of course the psychological aspects of, having one deaf ear and, the other ears already suffered. So that was a little bit difficult at times, but I managed quite well until there was a day where you can see in the image here as well, there was King's Day or Queen's Day, I can't remember, in the Netherlands in 2014. And we were celebrating a lot, and it involved far too many beers. And we were very late at night somewhere, and I had too much beer, I think, something that I don't do anymore. But back in the days when you're young, you do these things, and one of my earplugs fell out. And 3 days later, I got the bill, I got the invoice, and my tinnitus got very loud, very loud. So deaf in one ear, very loud tinnitus, having to write my bachelor paper was a very, very difficult and challenging time for me. Initially, my tinnitus wasn't that loud. So since the ENT had told me, oh, there's not really anything you need to do here. And I had a hearing aid, and I was like, okay, that's fine then. But when it became that loud, and I was going through that period of time where my bachelor paper, and that was really challenging and difficult, and going from not being able to sleep properly, etc., and all these kind of things. And after like 6 to 9 months, it did get significantly better, but still to this day is at a relatively high volume. But now I consider myself completely habituated, and I don't really care about my tinnitus. But just to set the scene a little bit of what I sort of was going through at the time, and back then there was literally online 2014, there was really not much you could find, if at all, about tinnitus, maybe a couple of books, etc. But I couldn't really find anything. I was in the Netherlands at the time doing my bachelor's degree, and that was quite a difficult time for me. So what has enabled me to do that shift? And it is quite important that we go a few years forward. Already when I came back from studying my master's degree in South Africa, I started working in consulting, as I said, and that was a little bit too boring for me. So I finally came to Berlin, worked in a hearing tech startup, traveled quite a lot, worked with researchers also in the tinnitus space, etc. And eventually I founded this coaching business. And over the years, I have coached hundreds of people, but I have also developed a combination of frameworks based on acceptance and commitment therapy. Joanna mentioned it, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive behavior therapy. I love elements of self-compassion from, for example, Dr. Kristin Neff. She's one of the leading self-compassion experts in the US. I love mixing a lot of different influences into the coaching program, and I would like to tell you why. My opinion is that if people are human and they have a brain, then everyone can retrain the brain to deprioritize tinnitus, meaning that the brain can understand in the same way we all know, or many of you guys will be familiar with Pavlov's conditioning. When we get bitten by a dog, our reactions towards a dog will be, I want to avoid dogs in future because the dog might bite me again. Right? So it becomes a conditioned response that when you see a dog, there's a fight or flight reflex and you say, ooh, I might get bitten again. And the same happens to tinnitus, right? We start dealing with tinnitus, the ENT says there's nothing we can do. We read some very negative stories on the internet. And then of course, that fight or flight instinct is triggered, sets off, and our brain constantly sees tinnitus as a threat. But my opinion and what I've seen over the years through working with these people and applying acceptance and commitment and cognitive behavior therapy and many other different, tools we take from not necessarily positive psychology, but also from all areas and potential support systems that we have, mindfulness, meditation, etc. And acceptance and commitment therapy uses the concept of neuroplasticity, basically simply the brain's ability to learn and rewire itself in the same way that you can learn a new language, learn how to stick drive a car, stick shift drive a car. All of these kind of things, as soon as you learn them, they become ingrained neural pathways that you can do absolutely automatically. Because if you had to learn every day again how to make a coffee and how to drive a car, you'd be busy the whole day, right? So we humans have evolved to be able to repeat processes over and over again. And therefore, neuroplasticity is incredibly important. So neuroplasticity helps us build new associations and new ways of relating to things as well. In tinnitus, what we see neuroplasticity is something that helps us add a new response. We can't erase an old response. Saying that, for example, I always like to give in acceptance commitment therapy, we like to give the example of the pink elephant. If I tell you, do not think of a pink elephant, you know what your brain will be thinking about. It's impossible not to think about the pink elephant. So the brain does not change by subtraction. The brain changes by addition. And addition means we give the brain input and new ways and tools of learning how to deal with a symptom, in this case tinnitus, which yes, can turn into many different other symptoms like anxiety conditions, depressive disorder, etc. But underlyingly, we have tinnitus as a symptom, and then we have all of these other conditions and comorbidities that come after tinnitus. So ACT and neuroplasticity are two of the main important tools that I have found that help people make this shift, change the way completely how they respond to tinnitus, and learn that even despite tinnitus, life can be exactly the same as before tinnitus. And the most important thing there is that your brain learns that this can absolutely just be a background sound. In the same vein, this is the same metaphor I always say. If you move to a new place and it's close to train tracks, for example, first couple of nights you don't sleep well and you always wake up in the middle of the night. But third or fourth or fifth night, suddenly you sleep like a baby because your brain has learned that despite the train riding there, you can still be safe, you can sleep, there is no danger going on. And this is the relationship of your conscious and subconscious mind, knowing that from the sound of the train, there is no danger. So how does this work in acceptance and commitment therapy? In acceptance and commitment therapy, we teach you to accept, not fight tinnitus, but we don't teach you coach you towards accepting tinnitus, but rather the thoughts and feelings about your tinnitus. Because the most important thing about your tinnitus is not the sound itself, but the way you think and relate to it. And that threefold loop of thinking about tinnitus in a certain way, that inspiring feelings in your body, and those feelings giving a feedback loop into your brain, and your brain saying, oh, this tinnitus, this is really dangerous, I need to get rid of this, or there is something I need to be doing. And this vicious cycle can only be interrupted if we accept the thoughts and feelings that come with tinnitus. Why? When we are in fight or flight mode, our amygdala and the limbic system, so the fear and panic based center in the brain, goes berserk, and we basically feel like everything's out of control. But when we accept, and for example, we do some mindfulness stuff, we do some breathing, some grounding, then our brain learns, well, it can't run from a lion and at the same time do breathing exercises. Or it can't say, my tinnitus is terrible, or for example, as a diffusion technique, sing my tinnitus is terrible to the tune of Happy Birthday. It will sound ridiculous. So the brain changes the way. There is a different, and we know this from functional MRIs, for example, that diffusion in acceptance and commitment therapy works. So when your most distressing thoughts, when you sing them to the tune of your most favorite song, and this is fantastic, it works for all kinds of thoughts. It doesn't only work for tinnitus, it works for all kinds of thoughts. Your most distressing thoughts, when you sing them to the tune of your favorite song, they will completely change. And there have been functional MRIs that prove that the way the brain reacts, and also how whether stress hormones are released or not, depends on how we respond to our thoughts. So what acceptance and commitment therapy does then is it does not get rid of your thoughts and feelings. They will still be there. But it is a tool to reduce the emotional charge, and it allows your brain to deprioritize tinnitus, because through acceptance, you get into an exposure rather than an avoidance. And the more you expose yourself to those thoughts and feelings, you learn what they are. Thoughts and feelings. They come and go. We are human beings. We have 80% negatively charged thoughts every single day. And you're not isolated with that, even if you don't have tinnitus. It's a normal human condition that we have a lot of negative thoughts. They are not the problem. They are not the problem. The problem is when we resist them, we want them to change, etc. The problem are not the negative thoughts in and of itself. They are absolutely normal. The important part is that when we learn to diffuse from our thoughts and learn to accept our feelings as we are human beings. So if we had a time with tinnitus that was severely distressing, how would we not react to tinnitus in that way anymore? But saying like, I have tinnitus, I'm really distressed by it, but I don't want to be distressed by it anymore, it doesn't happen in a day or two, right? There's a gap. There's the existence, there's the reality, and where you would like to get. So how do you bridge this gap? Bridging this gap comes from learning a new response, as we talked about in neuroplasticity. So how does acceptance and commitment therapy then change? Let me just check quickly. I think we've covered most of this already. So how does tinnitus then become less prominent and loses its importance over time? Well, the more you act and expose yourself to your tinnitus, but you learn that your thoughts are thoughts. My thought is, I could have, on the weekend, maybe I won 10 million in the lottery. Not sure if I would have told Joanna, maybe I can't make it. I'm on the Bahamas now because I won 10 million in the lottery, so I can't do the stream tonight. Yeah, nice thought, makes me feel good, but I haven't won 10 million in the lottery. And even if I would, maybe I would still be here because I enjoy my work. So it's important to know that thoughts are thoughts. And thoughts, when they're positive, they can guide us, they can make our life meaningful, but negative thoughts are also just thoughts, right? So we do not have to use them for guidance. We can say, this is a thought. Thank you, thought. Thank you for trying to alert me, trying to remind me, trying to protect me. But at the end, it's just a thought. And with feelings, the same thing. Feelings come and go. It's very important to know that feelings come and go. So trying to change your brain to say, oh, I don't want my tinnitus, I don't want to feel bad about it anymore, is not going to change that. You need to feel it, in your body, and you need to be able to, with your brain, to perceive that you are no longer endangered by your tinnitus. That's when you start to become habituated. That's when your brain learns we have nothing to fear from tinnitus anymore, because your brain is not constantly in this fight or flight mode towards your tinnitus anymore. because it understands that over time, the response diminishes through all the tools that we have, for example, in acceptance and commitment therapy. And now I would like to move on a little bit to founding mytinnitus.club. Joanna already talked a little bit about it. I don't want to hold you guys back too long because we still want to do a Q&A, but just want to talk a little bit about the community. I founded mytinnitus.club, as I said, 3 years ago. I'm currently doing a little bit of restructuring. So currently we have 3-month plan programs where I say the minimum time someone should spend in our club is a 3-month period where we go through a 3-month course. The first month is about understanding everything that I just talked about, because I do realize that me talking about this in 15 minutes is very, very condensed, and usually people take 3 months to do this, or minimum 6 to 8 weeks of coaching sessions with me. So it is quite condensed. And then the first month is then about understanding your response to tinnitus, understanding the whole concepts of neuroplasticity, how acceptance and commitment therapy works, how cognitive behavior therapy can play a role, which is, very a symbiosis relationship with acceptance and commitment therapy. And then the second month is all about, building and finding the right tools for you. I always say, if we see one person with tinnitus, we see one person with tinnitus. Everyone has a different reaction. You have different symptoms, you have different problems. Some people are more anxious, some people are less anxious, but they have trouble sleeping. So what I say is, like, everyone is different, and I want to provide a program for everyone, for every single person with tinnitus, that, people in the community and in the club, they come together and say, okay, my issues look a little bit like this, and then we cluster it, and then okay, you have this issue, I also, and then we can see, okay, where are the gaps? And then someone who's already been in there for longer says, okay, I've had the same issue 6 months ago, now you can do X, Y, Z. And then we have, obviously, we have a monthly topic every single month. So I have so much content from the last 3 years in there, like self-compassion, how neuroplasticity works. We did a month of tinnitus and stoicism. What the Stoics already talked thousands of years about tinnitus. They already had tinnitus too. So we talked about how would a Stoic philosopher approach tinnitus. I have a great interview with Dr. Guy Meadows. He's one of the leading sleep scientists from the UK on acceptance and commitment therapy and tinnitus and insomnia. So trying to really build a resource hub for people from all over the world to say, okay, we have this resource hub where everyone gets to see and assemble their own program in a way. It's a basic 3-month training for everyone, but then we have so many additional resources that people get to pick out for themselves. We recently reintroduced our buddy system as well, so everyone who's new in the club or relatively new gets paired with someone who's already further in their journey, exactly to overcome that people are overwhelmed, right? They come in, they're overwhelmed with their tinnitus, fully normal, we all know it, but then you need stability and support, and someone knows, hey, I've been exactly where you were 3 months ago, I am 80% better, and I'll guide you now. That way we also prevent that people just, like in many other online forums, they just come and vent, and it's just so negative, and that's exactly what I wanted to avoid. So what we do is, you can vent, of course, it's very important to vent your frustration, your anger, but what I want to do is I say to people, if you vent, please, what is your biggest problem right now? What are you struggling with? Which resources could be helping you? And what would it look like if someone else would be helping you with this right now? So all of these different kind of tools in order to set up our community after a guided space where, we help each other and lift each other up, rather than, falling into this perpetual negativity that unfortunately we see in a lot of online communities. I've already talked about it. We have weekly group coaching sessions. What my personal goal is, of course, to also provide a tool where it's not dependent on me giving one-on-one coaching sessions, because we all know how it is. The one-on-one coaching and the one-on-one work is the most expensive one, especially when it's not always paid by healthcare. In the US, we see horrendous prices for an hour of tinnitus coaching or for an hour of certain tinnitus consultations. So my concern was also to try to do something accessible for people, which I think we have found a very good solution. So the pricing starts from 140 euros for 3 months up to 900 euros for 3 months, including one-on-one coaching. So trying to really do a very sensible pricing strategy that's affordable for most people in different tiers. And depending on whether they want to do a self-study, self-paced study, or really wanting to do something more in-depth also with personal coaching, that's all accessible then. And then I think this is something that I only want to talk like one more minute about. One of the most important things is our habituation journeys, and this is, if you're listening, is it's never linear. So the progress will never be linear. There will be steps forward and steps back, and this is absolutely normal. So the most important thing there is that you have a support system, that you have an idea of what can work and what maybe didn't work as well for you. And it's incredibly important. For example, in the club, we do accountability check-in every 2 weeks. We have goals, and you say, okay, goals are not always there to be reached, but for you to set a direction. And if you didn't reach the goal, and if you encountered a setback or a difficulty, then that is progress in and of itself, because it helps you to further fine-tune where you need to go from there. So I think it's really, really important that you know that whether it's a community or a certain exercise that you repeat or that you continuously do, that you ground yourself in certain certain ways that you know that you can manage and overcome setbacks in your habituation journey. We have a lot of success stories as well inside the club. I have a dedicated space. The most recent one I found was amazing. I can't really say too much, I'm not a doctor, but we had someone with from the US with year-long benzodiazepine addiction because of their tinnitus and their anxiety. And he had 5 or 6 years of benzo addiction after him. And he joined the club end of October, I think, last year. And this month will be his last month. And he said, Frida, you cannot believe it. I have my life back. It's incredible. I'm going to go on holiday, something that I never thought was ever going to be possible again. And yeah, it's amazing for me to be able to do this. I can say that my own personal journey with tinnitus has been a very painful one, but one that currently I say I would not want to have missed, because it brought me where I am. It enables me to do what I do. It enables me to do what I love. And yeah. If you're thinking about getting a little bit more help, then here's a QR code. There are the podcasts, and I have a YouTube channel with, I think, 40,000 subscribers as well by now. So if you're interested in that, you can check out all of that. Joanna, let us know how we are doing on time and questions.
You've got plenty of time, so that's perfect. Let's leave this screen up for a little moment so that anyone can use the QR code if they wish to. And
Great.
If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to post them on the chat so I can ask Frida. That was amazing. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Let me just check. I think this is the end of my presentation, but I can always do an extra round.
No, that's perfect.
I have a podcast, so I can basically talk indefinitely.
That's excellent. This was really brilliant, and it was I have a couple of questions for you whilst we wait to see if anyone has any questions live. Can I get you to pop your presentation down? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really liked, so obviously my background is cognitive behavioral therapy, and there's a huge correlation between the two, as you said, the focus on the thoughts and the emotions of the patient. But what I found really interesting, and a problem that I experience with my patients, is that motivation, that gap where they're practicing, where they're trying to get to the point where they are using their therapy skills consistently. And I really liked the fact that you have this community and that accountability meeting that really struck a chord with me. Because it's something that I talk to my patients quite often about, like holding themselves accountable, right? It's down to you now to be doing this yourself. Do you have any tips in terms of motivation for patients when they're in that little middle period?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing is to know that life is now. Life is not when tinnitus is gone. Life is not when you're habituated, because habituation is a fluent and fluctuating construct. So life is now. And the best thing that you can do, and acceptance and commitment therapy and cognitive behavior therapy and neuroplasticity teaches us that when you live your life again, in spite of all the difficulties that you have with your tinnitus right now, I mean, yes, of course, you can apply all those diffusion technique, cognitive restructuring, so many things. But one of the best things that you can do is to live your life, to start doing the things again that you love, to, you know, actively look to create moments of joy and happiness, because they don't come flying. And it is difficult when we are in a more, you know, depressive state, maybe because of tinnitus, and we are in this, like, you know, puddle of mud, and it's a little bit difficult to go forward. So my biggest tip, what I say to people is, the best thing, the biggest gift that you can do for yourself is do things that you enjoy and love, and learn that tinnitus can just come with you if you are stuck in one of these, you know, periods of time where it's not really going forward as much as you would have liked to. And when you do that, you can give the biggest gift to yourself and saying, like, I'm moving on with my life despite my tinnitus not being perfect yet.
That's amazing. And you're right. It's, you know, not waiting for that magical moment, because it comes when we are just being normal and living our life in our happiest form. Are there any requirements in terms of joining your tinnitus club? Is there anything that patients need to do to be able to join?
Yeah. Not formally, but of course, what I find is always important, and what we write in our guidelines, and what's like implicitly included, is that we don't give any medical advice. I talked about the medication earlier on, but we don't give medical advice, and people are not supposed to be talking about, for example, medications or medical treatments on the platforms, etc. And it's very important, of course, and this is my primary concern as someone who has an audiologist, right, and who is treated by an audiologist for my hearing loss, etc., that people really make sure to go to an ENT and to an audiologist as well, because we do know that it's really important that the brain needs all the information they can get. And therefore, it's really important that people go get their hearing checked and do everything they can from an audiological and medical side before they join such a program. Because the program is a great support system. It's a great way to learn and to habituate over time. But of course, we need to be safe from the medical side, and that's something the program cannot provide.
Of course, and that's a really good understanding to lay that out. Is the My Tinnitus Club, when patients are discussing, is that monitored at all? Is it guided by, like, yourself or somebody else?
So we have community moderators, people from within the club, for example. So what I do as well is that often people who just love the club so much that continue to stay. So we have people who've been there for nearly since its inception, and these people know their way around the community very well. They know how to guide people to the appropriate resources. They know how to intervene if someone has a difficulty. It's not been such a big issue so far, which is very exciting, very good for me as well as a host, because you can imagine it's a lot of work as well. But of course, so I think it has to be a symbiosis of a guided system, right? So a 3-month course, a guided system, and then also a monitored platform that's not only monitored by, you know, me as a moderator, but also by people who are very far in their habituation journey already, or maybe already habituated, but they're still in the community, because, you know, the last step, it's a little bit like AA, the last step in order to be fully habituated is to be confronted with someone else's tinnitus habituation problems, and then to help them over the line. And that fully habituates you, because, you know, the fragile part is where you feel habituated, but you don't want to know anything about tinnitus anymore because you are afraid that it might trigger your tinnitus again. That is a very fragile state. So my opinion is, only once you can fully expose yourself to that, same with alcohol, only when you can be someone else's sponsor and help them over their first 1, 2, 3 months without alcohol or something like that, will you be able to also be fully habituated. And I think that symbiosis of a guided program, of course, I am daily online on the community in my business hours from 9 to 5 p.m. So whatever goes on in the daily chat, I see it. If someone says something, I can moderate it, or can say, hey, the guidelines are here, you violated them, strike one. Happens very seldomly. Happened once when someone was talking about what antidepressants they should ask for at their GPs or something. And I said, I told you, no medical advice here. You can talk to your psychiatrist or your GP, but not here inside the club, because we're not talking medications on here.
That's amazing. And I love that idea. of that last step about helping someone else, because that's exactly it, isn't it? You know, ignorance is bliss. You know, we can ignore the problem, but that doesn't help us, because what if you're confronted with it at a time that you're not prepared for? You know, by having that full acceptance really does allow you to embrace that, you know, you have brought this and you've accepted it into your life. So I love that side of it.
It's also, look, because we all know that tinnitus is so fragile in terms of spikes or increases. I think one of the biggest fears, I don't know with your patients, but with the people I work with, is what if it gets worse in future?
Yeah.
And I say, like, it doesn't matter, because your biggest problem is not the sound, the intensity or the pitch, but your response to it. So again, the physiological experience of a sound is not your problem. It's your thoughts and emotions that are the problem. So it also doesn't matter. I've seen people with the quietest tinnitus, subjectively speaking, have the huge panic reactions to it, like fainting panic reactions.
Yeah.
And I've had people with massively loud tinnitus with different humming, buzzing, screeching, whatever, be fully habituated and live their lives perfectly fine. So that really is what shows us that the biggest trouble here is not the physiological experience of a sound, which unfortunately is a phantom sound generated in the auditory cortex in the brain. We can't really do much about it till now. Maybe in future we will, but for now that's something we deal with. And what I always say, like, look, I also am afraid that maybe eventually I will lose my hearing for good. Maybe I'm only 35 years old. One ear is gone, the other one's not great anymore. I will get a cochlear implant, and then I will hear again. That's what it is.
Is that, yeah, I think that is such an important point, because you know, tinnitus is such a personal journey for every individual, and often we get asked these generalized questions, you know, what happens if this gets worse? What happens if my hearing changes? And we don't have those answers, essentially, because it is completely individual. You know, I had a patient recently, they had four sounds they could hear in one ear, five sounds they could hear in another ear, and you'd think, listening to them, that it would be such a struggle for them, but they said actually most of the sounds I can completely ignore. They just wanted to make sure that their hearing system was working as it should do and have a hearing checkup. And that was brilliant. But, you know, when you look at it on paper, you would say, right, okay, that patient's really struggling. This is something that we need to help them with. And they were absolutely fine. And you have somebody who has quiet tinnitus, and it is all consuming for them. Such an individual you know, problem, and that's why that this patient-centered approach is so important, and having that club and having these people to talk to really individualizes that and gives them the support that they need. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is it as well, Frida, I want to check, is it the club in various different languages?
No, only in English.
Oh, okay.
I think having it in German, Spanish, French, etc., would be a really nice feature. But for now, I mean, we have people from Spain, Canada, Israel, Netherlands, Germany, Austria, New Zealand, Australia, UK, of course, many people from the UK, Ireland, so many more. But like just a few of them.
But I suppose English is the common denominator
English
there.
is our conversation language. Yes, English is our main language. I sometimes chat in Spanish with some of the people there. My wife is from Colombia and I speak Spanish. So I sometimes with some of the Spanish members, I speak a little bit of Spanish sometimes when they don't understand something. So I can, you know, or do a little bit of German with a couple of the German members or Austrian members. But no, our meetings are always in English, and everyone understands and speaks English enough to be completely able to understand and talk about all the concepts, etc.
That's amazing. And once someone has signed up, they've got sort of full access straight away?
Yes, of course.
Amazing.
I told you before, I'm a single entrepreneur, so it is a little bit, it takes a while to build all of that up. But once someone signs up, they get their login access, 3-month access for the complete program, the 3-month course. People get a weekly email with like the oversight of where they are, what they should be doing in terms of the next steps. People who sign up for the accelerator program get access to the weekly group coaching as well, and people with the ultimate access get access to 2 monthly coaching sessions with me. All of this is like sent in like a welcome package, and then weekly emails depending on what pricing level people choose and what level of support. And then basically that's like a program basically where it's all about, you know, going from the different months to the different weeks, also going into the club, learning all the resources, getting to know the people. First thing people do is introduce themselves in a new member space, and everyone says, "Hey, welcome." And yeah, that's basically the journey that people have inside the Tinnitus Club.
Incredible. I love that you said that you have people who have been with you since the start, you know, because it's quite common to find patients who have really struggled with their tinnitus and are quite passionate, like yourself, about it, and want to sort of help others, sort of guide them through. And it's really lovely to have that positivity, because, you know, we all know that there's a lot on social media and the internet that is really negative, especially about tinnitus and sound sensitivities. And you know, the whole point of this is to find those positivities, isn't it? And stay with those, because that's what's going to help us through.
My biggest problem is not with the negativity, but my biggest problem is with the fact that people who might be in really dark spaces come to certain forums that are unregulated and vent. They herd mentality infect the rest of the people, and they might be completely habituated 3 months later. But do these people come back to tell the people, hey, 3 months later, I'm all good, guys, sorry for the post early on? No one does that.
No.
So the bias is unfortunately so negative with tinnitus, and most of the information and the internet obviously unfortunately thrives out of negativity. No one wants to see those positive stories. It's all clickbait. So the problem is it's the same prospect with the news, right? With all the negative stuff. No one shares like helped an old lady over the street and carried her groceries and had an ice cream with her afterwards. Well, that was amazing. No one shares that, unfortunately. No. So with tinnitus, it's the same. And the problem is, I always say to people, why are people so negative? I'm like, well, it's normal. If we are negative, then we want to vent and we want to feel heard. It's absolutely normal when you struggle this much. But when you don't struggle anymore, you just forget about it. And you just leave that comment there. You never go back and do something about this and tell people, hey guys, it's gotten a lot better now. Because you don't want to go back to that place, because you know you put it in there and other people put the same stuff in there. You don't want to go back to that place. So it's incredibly important that we remind ourselves that we don't go down that rabbit hole, right? Because it only, the only thing it does, it reinforces this anxiety loop, and that gets you further away from habituation rather than getting you closer.
Yeah, and that's something that we look at with CBT, is stopping those behaviors and rituals that we naturally get into. So we look at that sort of that side of it. But and you're completely right. We all need to have that space to vent and to be able to discuss our frustrations. But I really liked what you said there. Okay, if we do that, we need to then look at, okay, well, what can I do next? Let's go, let's get all this out. Let's have that vent, make us sort of feel better. But what is the next step? What's the thing that we're going to do next to improve this, to make this better?
It's the same thing, like same concept. When I go to my therapist, my German health insurance pays for my psychotherapy, which I'm very grateful for. I don't go there to only tell him like, oh, everything's so terrible, goodbye. No, I told him like, this is going on and that, and it's like, and this is like, and I have to figure out and like this, and then sometimes there's a solution, sometimes there's not a solution, but sometimes there is like we could approach, and that's what life is about, right? That's like, we try to solve problems, we try to figure stuff out, we try to make it meaningful, we do this and we do that, and that's quite the beauty of life. But we don't go there and say, oh, this is all shit, and then I go again. Like, no, that's not what happens.
And I think that, by having that community, sometimes it might be that we go, this is how I'm feeling and I need to get this out and I want to move forward, but I'm not entirely sure how. And they're having that community then allows people to go, right, okay, well, maybe let's look at this, or maybe let's try this. And I love that aspect of it, because sometimes we just need a little push or a little helping hand.
Yeah.
And obviously we can have that in one-to-one sessions or therapy, whatever you're doing. But sometimes it's nice to just speak to somebody who's got lived experience as well and who's
Mm.
been through it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem what I see, look, like internet and forums, there's also, as we discussed before, no accountability inside the club. If someone says, oh, venting and frustration, and then we say to him, okay, very clear what you told us and what your problem is, then we suggest a couple of things. And in the next meeting, when we ask the person, so how did it go? And they say, oh yeah, I didn't have time to try it. Then we say, sorry. But if you come here to vent, but you don't take up any of the suggestions, like
Yeah.
maybe you should be a little bit more accountable. So you have to try the techniques before you say, oh, nothing's working for me. My tinnitus is terrible. I can't bear it anymore. Right? But then if you do that and you don't try any of the suggestions that all the people gave you, well, then maybe that's not the space for you. Maybe
Yeah.
then something else is holding you back.
And it's really important to raise that point and go, actually, okay, well, we've given you these things, I get it often in my practice, right? Okay, well, have you done this? No. Okay, well, what? Well,
Well, why
we need
not?
to, yeah, why not? What can we do to motivate you to get to that point? Because these are the things you ask the question, what can I do to help in this situation? We gave you these things to try. Until you try them, we don't know what we need to do next. So now it's down to you, and now it's you've got to
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, yeah. Or look, like if someone says I'm not comfortable with breathing techniques because I had long COVID or something like that, then I fully understand that. And I say, okay, don't do breathing techniques. But we have a million other techniques that you can
Yeah.
try, from mindfulness or from diffusion or from value-based living or from so many potential tools. And I just want to mention also The Happiness Trap from Russ Harris, the ACT-based book, which has been transformative for my life and for many people that I've worked with as well. So I can just only recommend that to everyone. That's just such a fantastic resource that I base a lot of my work on as well. And I think it's very, very important to find your own path. This is probably the most important final message from my side, to say it's most important to really find your own path and what works for you, because no two journeys are the same. It's important to go through the steps, to acknowledge them, but to also know that no two journeys are the same, and you need to watch your own individual progress.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, people can access the QR code that you popped up earlier. They can get you on LinkedIn. Anywhere else that they can access your information?
Yeah, so I have a very, very simple link forward. That's www.habituate.online.
Love it.
Very simple. Goes to a link tree. YouTube channel is on there, sound podcast, the program, and all of that kind of stuff. So
Everything can be
habituate.online.
found there.
Very easy.
That's amazing. That's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your work with us, Frida. I really appreciate it. It's been really informative. Obviously, you can access Frida on the link that he just stated with us. Also, if you have any other problems that we have talked about today, you can access Hashir International website. Also has a lot of interesting resources for patients, families, and healthcare professionals. Thank you so much again for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Frida. That was absolutely amazing. I will